Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Ukraine has warned of a critical situation at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as Russian strikes in Kharkiv injured 6 and sparked fires, as per Regional Governor Oleksandr Hubov. A separate daytime drone attack in Dnipro has killed 1 man, injured 20 and damaged medical and residential buildings. The global Samud Flotilla, attempting to deliver aid to Gaza, has reported that unidentified unlit vessels approached its boats before departing. Participants activated security protocols to prepare for a possible interception, according to media reports. Today, the U.S. government has shut down after the Senate rejected a short-term spending measure, holding critical economic data and furloughing 750,000 federal workers at a daily cost of $400 million. Analysts warn the stalemate amid partisan divides over health benefits could last longer than past closures, according to media reports. A severe rainstorm in Ukraine's Odessa has killed at least 9 people, including 1 child, after the city received nearly 2 months' worth of rainfall in just 7 hours. Mayor Gennady Trukhanov warned that no sewer system could withstand such flooding. A powerful 6.9 magnitude earthquake has struck the central Philippines, killing at least 60 people on Cebu Island, with officials warning the death toll could rise as rescuers search collapsed building. The quake has reportedly injured 147 people, damaged 22 buildings, and triggered 379 aftershocks so far. About 2,300 unionized airport workers at 15 South Korean airports began a strike today, demanding better pay, more rest days, and improved safety conditions, the Korea Airports Corporation has confirmed. The action is led by the Korean Public Service and Transport Workers Union. Taiwan has rejected U.S. pressure to shift half of its semiconductor production to U.S., with the island's lead tariff negotiator declaring it will not agree to such demands. This statement highlights rising tensions over global chip supply chains and tariff negotiations worldwide. In Greece, trains, ferries, and taxis have halted their services as the country witnessed a 1-day general strike against extended working hours, with protests expected in Athens. The strike, organized by Greece's largest public and private unions, targets a government's plan to apply the 13-hour workday cap to single-job workers. Now we have a breaking news. Multiple explosions have been reported in Lerchenauer Strasse in Munich, Germany, according to local authorities and media reports. A large police and firefighter presence is at the scene, with gunshots also reported in the area. German police has confirmed an ongoing operation in the Lerchenau area, saying that they are working closely with the fire department. Authorities have also warned of significant traffic disruptions and advised civilians to avoid the area and take wide detours. There is rampant speculation on social media with reports claiming that the incident may involve a man allegedly rigging his parents' house with explosives, setting it on fire, and taking his own life. Authorities have not yet confirmed this claim. Now we move on. According to a senior rescue official, the death toll has risen to 69 and 150 people injured as a 6.9 magnitude earthquake hit Cebu province in the central Philippines on Tuesday night. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology has reported that the quake struck at a depth of 5 kilometers, approximately 19 kilometers northeast of Bogo City. The tremors were also felt in many neighboring provinces in the central Philippines, as well as some regions in the southern Philippines. Rescue operations are underway as authorities warned the death toll may rise amid widespread damage to infrastructure and power lines. Hospitals on the Philippine island of Cebu have been flooded with patients, and some of the injured are being treated on beds on the driveway of the Cebu Provincial Hospital in Bogo. They had also been wheeled out of the hospital building amid fears of further aftershocks. Let's listen into what one of the rescuers has said.
Ang daming pasyente, di na kaya dito galing sa Cebu.
Now we move on to our next news. The U.S. government has officially shut down at midnight Eastern Time after Congress and U.S. President Donald Trump have failed to break a bitter budget impasse, triggering the nation's 15th funding lapse since 1981 and the first since the record 35-day shutdown of 2008 to 2019. Federal agencies have begun closing their operations after Senate Democrats blocked Republican stopgap measure that would have kept the government funding flowing through November 21st. Democrats had demanded the bill to include an extension of health care subsidies and roll back Medicaid cuts, which Republicans refused to attach. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for joining us. Now, what's your reaction? It is happening after 7 years, and what is going on with this news now?
It's certainly good to join you this morning from London. The key thing is we go back to the first Trump administration, where it was the whole shutdown was for 35 days, a month. And that was over the spending plans that President Trump then first administration put through in regard to building the wall. And the Democrats, who are ideologically opposed to this, we only have to see what happened over the Biden administration over the last 4 years. So that was why. There is, of course, we've got DOGE. We've got the huge complaint about US aid, where this money has gone, tracking where money has gone, and that is vitally important to the Trump administration, and they've taken great umbrage to that as they've been trying to go through the books to say, well, why are we spending money on this? Why are we spending money on an art class in the middle of Afghanistan, for argument's sake? Excuse me. So this is all part of it, and yes, the Democrats have been. They have then refused to the negotiations, as you pointed out, and others, which is over the whole thing of Medicare aid and all of these issues. But if we look on paper, the Americans, the debt is 37 trillion. While President Trump is getting deals in, he is wanting businesses to get back into America and manufacture there and get jobs into America. This is all about that and balancing the books. And of course, these payments still have to be paid for. They will then have to balance the books. They will then have to renegotiate the loans, which are continuing to come up at various times. And when you've got one party that wants to spend money as if it's like water, and another party administration that comes in to say, we need to rein all this back in, then you are going to reach the crunch point that they have now reached. Asuma.
And how does this highlight the deep partisan divide between Democrats and Republicans in Congress?
It highlights it yet again, as various people like to say how divided America is. In many ways, through the press, then it will seem to be like that. But there are many, many Americans who are not divided, who want, in one sense, to use that phrase, they want their country back. We don't want the anarchists here. We don't want Marxist leftist ideology in our country. We want people to respect the rule of law, and we want people, if they're said no, not to go around and think it's perfectly acceptable to cause riots and burn half America down. So you have got this ideology, you've got an attack, in my humble opinion, and others, from within, because people don't believe in what America stands for. They don't believe in the Constitution, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the fact that you can go out there and the American dream has been under attack for a number of years. But for people to go out there and work hard and achieve things, instead of then having an environment, an ideology of thinking that says, oh, you're just going to be handed everything on a plate, you're just going to get government handouts. This kind of thinking, that's why there is a rise of populism within Europe and elsewhere, because they're saying the same things. But you are right, Asuma. On the one hand, within the press, it makes great headlines. There's a huge divide, but there is an administration that was voted in to build the wall and to sort out crime and to put America first. That's why they then voted for President Trump. Asuma.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mark for joining us and sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now we move on. Russia and China are working to increase the output of major Russian LNG projects, including the Arctic LNG 2 and Sakhalin 2 projects. Reports from Russia have stated that the two nations are making, quote, serious joint progress to boost LNG trade, with China set to benefit from cheap Russian LNG as they consolidate the bilateral trade relationship between their countries. The Arctic LNG 2 project in particular has been hit by Western sanctions, with the aim being to prevent Russia from building more production capacity for energy producer products. However, independent reports suggest that total imports to China from the Arctic LNG 2 project have already surpassed 370 kilotons of LNG since late August. And China is set to receive at least 150 kilotons more in the near future. This marks Beijing's swift transition from not importing any Arctic LNG 2 to becoming its main outlet. Now for this discussion, we are joined by Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Mark, for staying with us. Now, given this impact of Western sanctions on Russian energy and their intention to prevent Russian projects and also looking at the Ukraine and Russia's war, how has China navigated these to position itself as the primary recipient? And how is China benefiting from this situation?
They have waited. They have been hardball in these negotiations. There's also been another discussion about building an oil pipeline from Russia all the way down to China, and then the Chinese turning around and saying, we do this, we put this in place, then we want a very good deal on the amount of oil, on the price that we are paying for that oil. In fact, we want the same kind of deal domestically, where you are trying to keep the domestic price down of oil for Russian citizens. So, and of course that price would be as low as possible, where in the end Russia are turning around and going, well, does this make it economically viable for us? In this particular region on the West Siberian coast, there is the plant that has been built there is to then generate 20 million tons of LNG. We all know, having you and I reported on the SCO, on the Shanghai conference, and we look at who was there, we look at the way Russia and their relationship with China, and as you referenced to in regard to the Ukraine-Russian war, and Russia war chest is dependent on selling energy. And as China would then, on one sense publicly, but also really trying to look for very, very good trade deals that benefit them. So you can have an interesting discussion about saying that, are they friends, are they united? The whole thing is to then, for China's point of view, is to undercut the power of the West. And this is what this is all about. But potentially supporting an ally, but also getting cheap energy that they need for their own economy, but also to make a point to the Western world that they're, in my opinion, continuing to flex their muscles and wanting to be the #1 economic powerhouse in the world. Asuma.
Right. And how do you view the growing energy partnership between these two countries, particularly with regard to, and what implications might this have for global energy markets now?
Well, we've already, I mean, you and I have commented on the fact that, you know, where India has been buying oil off Russia and then selling it on the wide open market and making a profit of that, and then there's been the criticism from President Trump over saying, well, if you're doing this, then you're funding the Russian economy, which is then helping them to, in the regard to their war that they started on the 22nd of February 2022 by invading Ukraine. Plus, President Trump has also had a go at other European partners who are saying, well, where are you buying your energy from? Come to America instead of looking to Russia. Because it is, at the one hand, we've got, as I said, we've got this war going on, but how then this is being financed. So we've got this economic war of the material of oil, gas, and other energy that is actually going on because we want the war in Europe to stop, and then it's looking at how that is then funded. That's why President Trump has said what he has said, and also in the past, in his first administration, when he said, well, you're just being dependent on Russia for your energy, and you need to wake up to that. We all remember when Angela Merkel and co. He was on a seat and they were gathering around his desk and they were looking down on him as if they're giving him a lecture, and they didn't like the fact that what he said in regard to where do you get your energy from, Asuma.
And lastly, what are the long-term consequences of this, in your words, economic war, particularly for China, if China continues to deepen its reliance on Russian LNG? Is there any risk for China by doing this or buying Russian oil, LNG?
Well, again, you make a very, very good point about what is happening then long term, because we can argue that the Chinese economy may not be as strong as they would then like to project. They are reliant on, they need energy to keep pushing the economic powerhouse that they want to have. And as you and I know, as we look back in history, sadly, wars, disputes are fought over mineral resources, over oil, over gas. If we go through the last 300 years, we would have an interesting discussion about that and these and the power plays and what has happened between countries, where now we are trying to, in all sincerity, even though we look at certain aspects of the world at the moment, it seems far more of a dangerous place. But we look at the fact that we're trying to negotiate where we've got, if people then depend economically with trading with each other, then they're not necessarily going to go to war, which is the mindset of President Trump, where he's wanting to sort these issues out, tie up the whole thing of globalism, so that people then wouldn't do that. But it also means that if someone made it to the top, you can then have global control over everything that's going on. I think Asuma, at the moment, we've got I hate to say it, on the one hand, there's like a sitting back to see what's going to play out, even though potentially we've already just talked about it. We can see how this is playing out. And for the UK, for argument's sake, if we'd actually gone up to the North Sea and started drilling our own oil, then we wouldn't be dependent on Russian gas. We wouldn't be dependent on anyone else. And then our own energy prices, which seems to be the most expensive in Europe and beyond, would then fall through the floor and be extremely cheap. As we look at the world, there's a lot of power play going on in regard to energy, and you're quite right to ask that question. And I think over the next few months, we are going to see that unfold. The frustration is people want a war to end, to where Russia invaded Ukraine. They want that to end. And energy and where we go and get that is all part of that discussion to end it, and asking countries not to export their natural gas or their oil to actually fund that. It's all part of that. And plus, as I said before, without sounding repetitive, the Chinese then pushing for economic dominance. Asuma.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mark for joining us and sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, looking at China, China has kicked off a new visa program aimed at attracting foreign talent in science and technology, which is reportedly part of ongoing efforts to position itself as a world leader in those sectors ahead of the United States. The Chinese measure announced in August stands in stark contrast to recent U.S. policy, with the Trump administration suddenly introducing new and expensive changes to its own skilled worker visas last month. China's new K visa significantly simplifies the immigration process for those eligible, according to Chinese state media. Reportedly, in contrast to many other visa categories, the K visa does not require a domestic employer or entity to issue an invitation to the applicant. The official description for those able to apply is young foreign scientific and technological talents. But the exact age, educational background, and work experience requirements needed are as yet unclear. Now we go back for this discussion to Mark Sutherland. He's a geopolitical commentator, joins us live from London. Thank you, Mark, for staying with us. Now, what do you think about this China's approach to attract skilled workers? And do you think that this recent changes, will this be enough to attract the talents which were going to U.S. maybe to get good jobs in U.S.? Do you think these talents will be, maybe we can call it brain drain to China?
Maybe so. I mean, I was slightly amused on the one hand when I read this, because I just thought, why am I surprised in regard to what China is then doing by putting this visa forward? As you are fully aware of, there are many young people with all tech experience from India that have then been working in America. That's why there's a big outcry about the visa changes, and then this whole thing of wanting to charge people $100,000 for that particular visa. Plus, within one or two people within tech companies have actually said, no, we need these employees. This is not necessarily a good move. Plus, you are then having a president who's then looking at who is within American citizens. Why can they not do the jobs? Plus, then you could argue it then forces people to say, well, we need to train our own citizens better in this field. And further, from our previous discussion, when we're talking about the Chinese economy, when they are turning around and going, okay, if you don't want them, then we'll have them, because this is all about making sure for China, they want to be the #1 economy in the world, and they then see within tech, and there's all the interesting things that they get up to, AI wise, etc. This is where the new battle is. Hence why they've then deemed to say no. We will have a visa system that will be a lot easier to allow people to come and work for China. So then this is another economic battle over skills, Asuma.
Right. And how do you view this K visa program for these technological talent? What implication might this have for US, UK, and other Western countries that are traditionally seen as the top destination for these skilled workers?
Well, I think on one hand you could say it's fairly obvious, because if you've got another body outside that, the Chinese, that are competing for those skills as well, and then providing people with amazing salaries and amazing opportunities, then people will be very tempted to go there. Even if China is one big technocratic state, so that will be maybe a bit of a shock some of them to actually go and work there. But then again, when I use that phrase technocratic shock, they are then wanting to work within the tech sector. So ideologically, maybe they don't particularly have a problem. I have a problem with that. One of the challenges of the tech sector is particularly in AI, there's a lot of moral issues in regard to that and what you are then controlling, and can humanity then have control over AI and what you've released. If you then go into an ideology where it seems that there is a lesser of a moral code, then maybe people will be comfortable with that. But that's another huge issue that we have to look at. But at the end of the day, for China, this is about economic warfare and how much they can then damage the West and damage the US and get ahead. Assuming.
Yes, and now looking at this again, Mark, how does this ambiguity or unclear agenda or requirements about this K visa, China's K visa, how do you think this will affect Western professionals' decisions to relocate? And do you think this move can pressure Western countries, US, also UK, to reevaluate their immigration policies for the skilled workers?
You raise a very, very good question. I'm sure that as soon as China has released this, I'm sure that within America, within the Trump administration, within the business departments and people that run that and the various hats, they will then they will look at this immediately if they need to, and other Western countries then need to look at this. I mean, one of the problems is within Europe, or particularly within the UK, there is a massive there is going to be a brain drain. There's already a huge millionaire drain, because there's such high taxes in this country and within other parts of Europe. So it's not becoming competitive because it believes in this cooperative socialist ideology. So that is what we're seeing. But if the Americans are astute, they will then look at their visas, they will then pay attention to what tech companies are saying and what their demands are. And especially as President Trump is asking for companies like Apple, etc., to then take their products and their manufacturing base back to America. So with all these countries that are then wanting to, these companies are wanting to advance their technology, they then need the skills and the brains to do that. So maybe we're going to see a change. Maybe we'll see the $100,000 demand disappear. I don't know, but you raise a very important question that all of these, it's how we look at economic battles, economic warfare. That is all out there. For countries and companies to be competitively ahead, there are many historical lessons of how people have then got the patent for this invention and the patent for that invention, and got it out there first. And then they've gained an economic advantage for then doing that. Assuma.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Mark Sutherland for joining us and sharing your insight as a geopolitical commentator all the way from London. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. Looking back at North America, US President Donald Trump has now claimed that his administration had reached a deal with Harvard University after months of negotiations, and that the school will pay $500 million. President Trump has also claimed that Harvard will be opening trade schools and train people in AI and engineering, among other things. Harvard has not yet made a comment or acknowledged any such deal. Let's listen into what the U.S. president has said.
Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, who's so fantastic, and I guess we reached a deal with Harvard today, so we'll see how that, all you have to do is paper it, right, Linda? Just
yes, sir.
Paper it out. That'll be great, though. It's going to have to do with something that's very important to everyone.
Well, this is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.